Game development can be tough and lonely, and we wanted to dispel that as the way of the world. We asked our community. Not because we think game development's terrible, but just because we wanted you to know that you're not on your own when you have those bad moments. We wanted to just talk about it and see what we can do about the things when they're not going so well. So Will's going to be taking us through. You can see we've asked on our Discord server, what's the worst thing about game development? Will, let's have a look at what people are saying.
Right off the bat, Rick, got from the man himself, Tim Ruswick, always starting and never finishing. It's a classic. It's a classic.
I can see that frustrates Tim. He's like, I hate that I don't finish them. I think if you just love the process of making games, it's okay not to finish your games. And a lot of people get really down on themselves.
That's crazy.
I can never finish it. You know, what does it matter? You know, start a new one, because starting is fun. Oh, I've got a new idea and starting it's fun. But it doesn't lead to the joy of launching your game. But if you're happy just dabbling, then it's okay. So I guess message number one from me, like getting on my soapbox. It's okay if you don't finish your games. It's okay to just muck around and have a bit of fun with game development.
Rick, give me one piece of advice to those looking to actually finish their games.
I think the one piece of advice is if you want to finish your game, you have to transition from playing at making games to being a professional about making games. You have to be serious about it, and you have to kill a little bit of the joy. It goes from being just, you know, lovely learning journey into work. And so you just have to accept that it's work, and work has its good bits and its bad bits. So if you want to finish your game, accept that there's going to be some parts of it that are a bit sucky and not so much fun.
The picture I took of you the first time I ever came here. Ah, look at you, so young and happy. Where do the years go?
Speaking of which, Brianna says, finding out the bug I've spent a week trying to fix is actually an engine bug and not a bug in my code.
Anything that's out of your control is so frustrating, particularly when you spend a lot of time trying to track it down.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the worst. We're so used to in game development taking the blame for everything, right? With, oh, my code isn't good enough, or my art's not good enough, or there's an issue. I don't know about you, Rick, but I never assume that the engine is wrong. And maybe that's something that needs to change in game development.
You
maybe
wouldn't
we need
think
to start.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think it, no. And maybe we need to start coming at that attitude first. Obviously, the downside to that is that you might always assume that the engine is wrong and never actually get better at coding.
I think the advice I would have is if you're stuck on a bug for half a day, maybe just do a little bit of Googling around to see if something comes up. And I'm sure most people do this if they've got a bug. They're not just sitting there staring at the screen, yelling at it. But usually other people have encountered these sorts of things. These things happen. But yeah, it's a pain in the butt. In a way, it's good because it's like, oh, it's not me being crap. But it's super frustrating when it's the engine letting you down.
Yeah, I love these three comments. The volatility and turnover of the industry.
I mean, I'm a little bit older than you, Will. I'm an old guy. I've got grey in the beard, and I've seen this happen.
Could have fooled me, Rick. I
thought
I was the elder here.
Spring chicken. Yeah. So I've seen this happen cyclically a number of times where there's a boom period, you know, so many jobs, and then there's a bust period. It's like everyone's being laid off, and there's a boom and there's a bust. The only way to stay ahead of that is just be really good at what you do. And if there's room for 100 people during the good times and 50 people during the bad times, then the sad reality or the harsh reality is you just need to be one of the 50 that are really, really good. I don't like it as well, but it's business. And it's a very competitive industry, and it's very aspirational. So we need to align our expectations that it's tough, and you have to be sort of the best of the best to get into the industry and to stay in the industry. So
great comment from my name Jeff. How exhausted I feel after doing what seems like nothing. Jeff, I cannot relate more to you, my friend. You sit there for 2, 3, 4 hours. You feel like you've made such little progress, but you feel like you've climbed Everest. I mean, it's just, you can't avoid that feeling. I wonder, Rick, do you think that's the nature of creative projects generally?
It's a good lens of looking at it, Will, because I think anything that's creative technology, whether it's making games or making an app or making movies or animations, it's hard to know what the right answer is, because you're trying to be creative. You're trying to come up with something cool and fresh. And a lot of the times there is no roadmap to follow. You're trying to build something that's never been done before in a lot of cases. So I think you can get that a lot. Again, if you enjoy that, you've got to enjoy the thrill of the chase. You've got to enjoy the journey. It sounds very, very sort of Confucius stereotype, but I think game development, you really need to appreciate the journey and not focus on the destination.
Finally, inner peace. Now what?
because you can be working on your game for 3 years and then you launch it and you sell 100 copies. And so you have to just look at the 3 years and say, that was so much fun. I really love doing that. And I'm so proud of what I made, rather than looking at the 100 copies that you sold and think, wow, what a waste of time.
Brian has also responded to my name, Jeff. He says, most applications are built on that experience. Seems like nothing often lies about the real value of what you did. It's absolutely true. You can spend all day on the thing. You feel like you've done nothing. But exactly as Brian says, when you come back to that project in a week from now, you're going to be so glad you did that thing. You know, whether it was just a little refactor, or whether you changed an animation or whatever it is. I mean, animation's a big one for me. You know, I've spent a whole days trying to perfect a little pixel animation. But then when I feel like, oh, I achieved nothing today. And when I go back to the project, I'm like, that was pretty good. I'm glad I did that. So yeah, Brian's absolutely right there.
I think we can think of game development like driving your car from one side of the city to the other. And there's stages of driving where you're on, you know, a nice fast part of the road. There's 3 lanes, you're overtaking, you're making great progress, you're going quickly. Then you get off the off ramp and you hit the traffic lights and it's gridlock and you're stopped and you're not moving, and you know, you move forward just a little bit at a time. And I think game development experience is knowing fast bits and traffic lights, but also trying to take a path where maybe you avoid as many traffic lights as possible.
And off the back of what you're saying there, Peter here saying marketing, which is true, but also scrapping features later on that you spent a large amount of time on. And it's exactly what you're saying there, right? I think the thing with that is as annoying as that is, you still built that feature, right? You still spent time on those mechanics. So in a way, you know, you're making progress that you never know. You might come back and use those mechanics again. You might take some of the code that you used there and apply it somewhere else. So like you were saying, it's a lot like getting a car across the town. You're taking a little detour. You think, oh, this is awful, I'm taking a detour, but you're still making progress. So, you know, as long as you're not going back.
Totally valid. I mean, there's a frustration that we can see in a lot of these comments in here. The things that people don't like is things out of their control, or things where they invest time into something and then they're not getting a return on that investment. And that is super frustrating.
Cher says, and this maybe isn't the worst thing, but maybe some advice. I'm a fan of test-driven development. The short version being that you deliberately fail. And that's true. And that's good advice. Obviously, you want to be careful that you're not failing loads and not learning anything, because then you're kind of treading water there. Yeah,
iteration. Game development is all about iteration, and it happens so often. I fall into this trap as well myself, and I'm out there preaching do it this way, but then I kind of do it differently myself. Is you need to move fast and expect to throw things away, expect that you have to build upon it, expect that it's not going to work, expect that you have to iterate. And I think that can be really painful if you, once again, it's back to the comment from previous where the commenter was saying it's so frustrating to do a bunch of work and then throw it away. But if you expect that a lot of my things I'll throw away, maybe it's, I don't know, 3 out of every 4 things you'll throw away, then it's okay. You're just waiting to find the 1 in 4 that you don't have to throw away.
Yeah, exactly. Random Twig says dealing with players. That's a tough one. That is a tough one. Yeah. Everybody is enjoying the game development right up until you have to put the game out there. I mean, Rick, have you any experience with that? You know, you finally finish your game, you put it out to your players, and at that point you start to panic. At that point you start to think, oh man, you know, what if they hate it, or what if they comment badly on it, or have you experienced negative backlash for things and you think, screw you?
I find that the comments that hurt the most, whether it's a YouTube video or a course that we've made or a game that we've made, the comments that hurt the most are the comments that you know are true. They're the ones that really like, it's like, this game's so boring, the level design's stupid, and the enemies are too easy. You're like, oh, that's exactly what I was worried about. So they're the things that are so painful. And players who are pointing that out, I think it can really stab you in the heart. And again, this is reframe. I kind of feel like I'm doing a whole bunch of, well, don't feel that way, you should look at it this way, which I really don't want to do. I want to acknowledge that these things suck. But at the same time, if people haven't yet encountered this and they're hearing our community saying, dealing with players is difficult, I haven't had to deal with players yet. It can be difficult because people really, really want you to make something great for them, and they get upset if they feel it's not great. And what they're saying to you is, here's the way to make it great.
But on that point of taking on feedback, you know, I'm sure you've heard it before, Rick. There's something about how gamers, they know there's a problem, but they very rarely know what it is, right? Or they think they know what it is. They just don't know how to solve it, right? And this comes up time and time again. I'm sure you've heard stories about, oh, this gun's too weak. And then all the developer does is buff the screen shake when they're shooting it. And then suddenly the player's like, oh, the gun's too overpowered. And they lower the screen shake. Oh, that's just perfect. There's a skill almost in receiving feedback from players and being like, I get what you're saying, but understanding that what they're saying isn't always what they mean, or something like like that, right? Ramjot says not having enough time to do it all.
Oh, yeah, I hear you there.
That's
There's not
just
enough
it.
time in the day. When you've got family and kids and job and hobbies and exercise and all that kind of stuff, yeah, it's tough. I feel that pain.
Yeah. Shadow 2359. Worst thing about game development is getting started. Takes us right back to Tim at the beginning.
It's really
starting those
interesting. Well,
projects.
Tim was saying that he doesn't like that he doesn't finish, and Shadow is saying the hardest thing is getting started. So
Getting started.
there's
Yeah.
lots of hard bits in there. Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe Shadow is an expert at finishing and just can't start.
They should team up, Shadow and Tim.
Yeah.
You son of a...
Decidious TV writing code that doesn't work only to rewrite the code one-to-one and then somehow having it work. Is this an engine bug, Rick, or is this what's going on here? Why does this happen?
I find, for me, I have to love the process of being a detective and figuring out why the heck my code's not working. Because if I despise that, then that's half of what you're doing is just figuring out problem solving, figuring out why the heck it's not working. So I try to love that. I try to, like, I think, was it that semicolon? Was it, I had my if statement in the wrong spot? Was it that this was doing that? Did I have a race condition? I think I've solved it. What I don't like is when you solve it, but you don't know what you did to solve it, or you don't think you actually did anything.
Yeah, the worst feeling is when the code works and you can't figure out why it works. You're like, I don't know why this is working, but it's working, so I'm going to leave it. Yeah, it's annoying to not know. And finally from Dragon, yeah, the struggle with my brain to actually finish and polish and publish a game. Yeah, this idea, right, this struggle of putting it out to the world, handing over your baby to the prying eyes of the public, and you know, just not wanting to receive that criticism. I mean, it sucks, right? That's tough.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important to state why you're doing this. And a lot of people do it just because they love making games and dabbling and hanging out. So
I'm an anomalous.
What do you do?
I do my best.
Aw.
do it for that. And if you don't want to polish it and put it out there and have people judge it and, you know, have people say this is only a 6 out of 10 and why did you bother, then you don't have to do it. If you want to make money, then you have to get it out there. And if you want to make money, you have to polish it. And that's just part of the journey. So it's a little bit like when you go to the gym, you're going to sweat. And if you don't like getting your clothes all sweaty, then maybe don't go to the gym and do something else instead. Swim.
Yeah, or go to the gym naked. I don't know how that translates to game dev, but yeah.
Buy clothes that you don't mind getting sweaty. So
exactly.
Yes, naked
That's
ones.
good advice.
So these are just a couple of things that our community's talked about, they dislike about game development. Again, the reason we're talking about this is so that you can see other people are having the same challenges as you. Not to get down on making games. Making games is amazing. It can be great fun, but make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Make sure you're not being hard on yourself. And thanks, as always, to our community for being so vocal and wonderful and sharing their ideas and thoughts. Will, lovely chatting with you. Looking forward to our next community conversation soon.
Absolutely. If you want to partake in this kind of community discussion, we do weekly questions, daily polls, we run events in the community. So join the Discord. There'll be a link in the description and hope to see you there.